Hello and welcome to The Weeb, the podcast where we take 6 months to watch a single movie. I'm Beanie.
I'm Laurel.
12 episodes ago, you and I took a look at Neon Genesis Evangelion, and it was actually my very first time watching Evangelion. It had taken me that fucking long.
That's so crazy to me. It's been such a big part of my life for like my whole life that is still so jarring to hear.
And then continuing the trend of things taking a long time, 12 episodes later, we're finally covering the End of Evangelion. Now, before we actually get into End of Evangelion proper, we wanted to use this chance to give some of our more spoiler-heavy thoughts on the original series that we weren't able to do in our first episode.
Let's talk about mommies and mommy issues.
Let me climb inside my mom.
It's just like Uzumaki. Shout out to Junji Ito. Sorry, let me climb inside my mom threw me off. Yeah, one of the big themes of Evangelion that we'll kind of touch on more later, but I feel like we need to discuss before we, I don't want to say jump in after you said climb into your mother. There's a lot of really strong theming in Evangelion about parent-child relationships, and one thing we couldn't touch on is that the Evangelions are all outfitted with human souls, and that is a major part of how they operate. Now, that is also the reason why only Shinji and Asuka can be the pilots, not because they were born after the second impact, as is what the series initially presents to you, but because they are climbing back inside their mothers.
Much has been said about dearly departed Mr. Freud and the legitimacy of some of his studies, but when you know what the Evangelions are, there is some very intentional seeming imagery when it's like, hey, climb inside this long phallic tube, which is then inserted into your mom.
Oh, I never thought about the plugs as being phallic, but you're really right.
Of all your of all of your depth and study into Evangelion and your obsession with the series, how have you never noticed that specifically? As not meant as a shot against you. That's just
Am I wrong?
Hi, I'm Shinji Ikari and I'm my mom's tampon.
No, that's worse.
This is immediately the worst episode we've ever done. Oh god.
Shinji is the tampon Gajinka that we never needed or wanted.
Tampon Gajinka. Fuck.
This is either the best recording or the worst recording, and I'm not sure which.
The answer is yes, either way.
Okay, yeah, I somehow...
even 5 minutes into the fucking episode.
I mean, this is gonna happen when we're talking about End of Evangelion, Beanie. There's no way that we're gonna talk about End of Evangelion and it's gonna be fucking normal. This movie. For fuck's sake.
We might as well just end the episode here. I don't think anything is gonna beat Tampon Gijinka.
I think Evangelion is interesting though in that it doesn't take Freud at face value, which again we'll get into later. It kind of plays with it a bit and does its own thing, and also mix in some random Jewish symbolism, I guess. Throw that all in there.
Judeo-Christian.
Judeo-Christian for sure. Yes. So why don't we just touch on the mothers themselves and what we know about them before we get into anything else? I think that would make sense here.
I will say, when we were originally watching Evangelion, we talked about in the original episode, but there was a lot of stuff that I had osmosised about the show in the years before I actually watched it. It's one of the most popular anime ever made. I had been spoiled to the whole the Ava is Shinji's mom thing. I did unfortunately know that already.
Interesting.
And that did impact in the very first episode when Shinji is like, I don't want to get in the robot. What the fuck is wrong with you? I'm not a robot pilot. I'm just a little boy. And then the angel attacks and it causes some debris to fall and it's getting ready to crush Shinji. And then, oh my goodness, the Ava, it came alive. It raised its hand by itself to protect Shinji. And I was just like, fucking, well, that's his mom. That's mommy. I wonder how my viewing of that initial first episode would have been impacted if I didn't know about the whole I'm inside my mom thing. I gotta stop saying that.
I'm in the
Jesus.
womb. Yeah, that is interesting. I don't think I'd had it spoiled when I first watched it because I tried to go in as blind as possible, but it's been so long. But yeah, that does also explain further the berserk mechanic, the fact that they have these human souls in them. Yui Ikari as a character as a whole is pretty interesting too. We, I think, touched on her, but it's really difficult to talk about her at all without spoilers.
Her, Rei, the fact that her and Rei are maybe the same question mark?
Rei is biologically cloned from Yui, but does not have her memories.
Yeah.
And Rei is also made from Lilith in part. She has Lilith's soul in her. And in much the same way, we also see Kaoru with Adam's soul.
Now, is Kaoru also a mom clone?
No.
Kaoru is not mommy.
We don't know where Kaoru came from other than that he has the soul of Adam.
Mm-hmm.
And then we also get to learn that Kyoko is in the O2, Asuka's unit.
Kyoko being Asuka's mom.
Yes.
Which that we don't learn until End of Evangelion, correct?
We had some stuff about Asuka's mom, but we didn't learn that it was her mom in the EVA. We just learned some of her trauma that she had with her mom, which I think makes the payoff a lot better too in that regard. There's some really crazy scenes in here that I didn't 100% recognize until I went to read about them. Like in this, there's one scene where the EVA is talking to her, or she's hearing voices in her head, but I think it's a realistic assumption to jump to that she's hearing the voice of her EVA speaking to her. And most of the commands are like, live, 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 but there's one or two in the background that's the EVA saying, die with me, which kind of alludes to the fact that when her mother died in the EVA experiments and her soul was split from her body in some sort of way, and she started having consequences, psychological consequences as a result of that fragmentation is still present in the EVA, which I think is really interesting. So another thing we couldn't talk about is Rei. There's so much going on with Rei, and I know we touched on her being a clone a little bit already, but something that is really confusing to follow is that there are 3 different Reis in the series. Who are usually referred to as Rei 1, Rei 2, and Rei 3.
Very clever, guys.
Awesome. Rei 1, I think, died really early, but we see mostly Rei 2 throughout the TV series. And then when she dies, we start seeing Rei 3. I think around episode 22, 23, somewhere in that range.
And this is also not including the 50 creepy Rei clones that we see in the Rei pool.
They don't have souls. They're just body parts.
That's right. Ignore that.
No, it's a good point. I just have been trying to 100% understand the lore so that I can answer questions and shit.
Neon Genesis Evangelion is a little confusing. Okay, let's go ahead and start talking about the actual movie itself.
Yes.
The story behind the production of this movie is a bit complex, so in the interest of time, I'm just going to condense it a little bit. After the Neon Genesis Evangelion series finished airing in 1996, fans were split on the ending. A number of different factors during the show's production caused the final 2 episodes to become something incredibly contentious. While some fans saw the finale as an introspective and artistic triumph, many thought it was unsatisfying and left too many unanswered questions. Soon after, it was announced that episodes 25 and 26 would be remade. The first part of this was Neon Genesis Evangelion Death and Rebirth, which was largely a retelling of the series' first 24 episodes, but also included the first 20 minutes of what would eventually become the End of Evangelion, which looked to give a more concrete ending to the series' story.
From what I understand, it was primarily clip show as well, reused animation.
Yeah, there was a number, I think there were a few scenes that were added in, which eventually got put into what became the director's cut of the original show.
Yes, which we watched when we were first covering the show.
Yeah.
So any sort of commentary on that is already baked into our first episode.
Which is kind of why we just jumped right to End of Evangelion rather than doing Death and Rebirth.
Yeah, it's very redundant.
Although I do kind of wonder what it would be like to just watch Death and Rebirth and End of Evangelion and not the original show. I wonder what the general fandom consensus is on doing it that route. Probably not positive.
If you're gonna do that, there's also the rebuilds. There's what, 3 different ways you can watch Evangelion?
The rebuilds are pretty different though, right? They introduce a whole new character from what I understand.
I believe the plot is largely the same. It just goes into more depth in some areas and becomes a little less esoteric from what I understand. I've never seen them.
I'm not going to make any promises is to win, because knowing us, it'll probably take like 2 fucking years, but 100% at some point, I want us to check out the Rebuild movies and put it on the Patreon.
I mean, to be fair, it took them 20 years to finish the rebuilds, right?
Going back to talking about the movie, though, the film End of Evangelion is actually largely based on the original treatment for the show's finale. The film was directed by both Hideaki Anno and Kazuya Tsurumaki and was released in Japan in 1997. In 2002, Manga Entertainment released the film in the US on DVD, and today the rights to the movie, along with the rest of the franchise, are owned by G-Kids, who put out an updated dub. Something real quick I know you wanted to bring up is the lack of clarity on whether or not End of Evangelion is meant to fully replace the final 2 episodes of the show, or if it's more like a supplemental piece. Because some people say that it's like happening in tandem. Like this is seeing inside or seeing a different angle for just the events of the last 2 episodes, right?
Yeah, and it seems like a lot of the community discussing it, even the pretty well-educated people, are at a bit of an impasse because we can't determine whether or not this is mutually exclusive or not. And EVA is something that's so rife with like different sources and source material that are evaluated at, quote, different tiers of canonicity, unquote. I think you can either consider them to be happening as branching paths in like a visual novel type way, or you can look at it as happening concurrently, but there are retcons within End of Evangelion, because there are a few events that directly conflict with events told in episodes 25 and 26. Like, a lot of the deaths are very different between the 2 of them, which leads me to think that it's either retconned or a different pathway. But if it's retconned, that can still be considered complementary.
Now, I did let you handle the majority of the research this episode because you are so much more familiar with Evangelion as a franchise, but I did still do a little bit myself. And on this specific topic about whether or not it's a replacement or supplemental and all that, similar to something I found when Meme and I were doing Vision of Escaflowne, you get a lot of interviews from many different people on the creative staff that are saying contradictory things. Like, there are official statements from people who worked on the show that will say, no, this is fully supposed to be a replacement, just forget about the last 2 episodes. And then at the same time, other people on the creative staff who will say, no, you can watch both, do it at the same time, it's a supplemental thing, whatever, which is confusing. I will say, though, at least in terms of what I saw, it is a higher percentage of word of God, as you would say, of people saying, no, this is meant to be a replacement entirely. So take that as you will.
And even if you consider them separate endings, people generally consider things that happen in End of Evangelion to be canon for the series as a whole. Like all the stuff that's revealed with Lilith and Kyoko in End of Evangelion, a lot of people, like, even if you believe they're branching paths, those things are all still true in the TV series and the TV endings.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and get some more of the basic shit out of the way. This movie is absolutely stunning, both in terms of the art and the animation. Like, this is right up there next to Akira in terms of just getting the absolute most out of traditional cell animation.
I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around comparing this with Akira, because they're so different.
In terms of just, like, technical prep, but also because Akira, there were a few scenes in there that were very, I'm gonna simplify this a lot and say very heady. We'll use that word. And much like Evangelion, as you might expect, there's a lot of shots and visuals and scenes where it's just like, whoa, okay.
Like visual metaphors? What do you mean by heady?
It's that thankfully not common anymore take of like, oh, what drugs were they on when they came up with this? You know, that bullshit.
Oh, yeah. It's like, high concept art.
Yeah, there we go.
Higher concept.
Like, there's a lot of overlap there too, and just like, wow, they did that shit really well. Like a lot of the scenes in Akira where the psychic kids are using their powers and warping reality and whatnot, and the entire second half of this fucking movie.
A lot of stuff is literally happening, but so much of it is abstracted and not fully explained, and you have to piece things together. Evangelion is like a puzzle.
I can give both of these films very similar praises, is kind of what I mean.
And I think, too, that also ties into, like, theming the visuals to be tonally in sync with, like, the actual themes that are being discussed in the story and what have you. I love End of Evangelion because there is so much yonic imagery. Like, you see so much phallic imagery and stuff, but you never see anything using vulvas and pussies in a way that is not sexual and is actually, like, conceptual and artistic.
Pussy hands. Pussy hands.
Like, the portals being, like, giant vulvas that are taking you back into the womb is crazy. Like, can we get more of this? Like, there's a lot of psychological themes going on, but they were like, what if we took Freud, but made it about pussies instead? And I love that. I think it works so well with the theming of this show and, like, the relationship of parent and child and creation. It especially, the more you think about it, the more it makes sense, too, in the sense that Lilith is the progenitor of all of the humans. So, of course, imagery invoking Lilith would be maternal. Maternal in the sense of childbirth and not in the sense of, like, gendering. I love that.
So, apologies in advance for the heavy tone shift I'm about to pull on us. I wasn't really sure where I was going to slot this in, but it needs to go somewhere. I had a full-on mental breakdown after watching this movie.
Oh.
Watching this did something to me that I still can't entirely quantify, but for like 4 hours after I finished watching this movie, I alternated between nonverbal and my boyfriend consoling me as I cried in the closet. It was rough.
Beanie.
Like, silly haha podcast, like I was not okay after watching this movie. I'm gonna be fully honest. And I will admit I debated whether or not to even include this, but I did feel in the end that my highly unpleasant experience was relevant to my discussion on this film and how I'm coming out of certain things. So I wanted to be open about it.
I think that's a great point to bring up.
It took me a long time to really articulate, even to myself, why I had such an intense reaction to the film, and I'm still not 100% sure, but I think the biggest part of it was that we talk about media being deep in terms of what it means or what it's trying to say, that sort of thing. And what a show or a book or a movie has to say speaks to what its creator or creators have to say. The depth of a piece of media is a reflection of the depth within the creators.
Sure.
Would you agree with me on that?
To an extent. I think that also depends on how much you're separating art from the artist. Like, I think it's one variable. I think there's other things that go into it.
There's also a death of the author aspect in there too, for sure.
Right, or like also the idea that, like, if it's a group of people, how much is one person versus another? Are you able to quantify that?
Auteur theory.
But for simplification purposes, let's say yes.
Yeah. This film reflected an unfathomable depth inside its creators that forced me to examine what level of depth I had within myself, and it just made me feel small. Watching this movie made me feel like an empty husk pretending to be a person. I don't say this in a self-deprecative sort of way.
No.
I sort of had to go through a minor existential crisis as I was simultaneously exposed to this fantastic piece of art and then was forced to accept the fact that I will never be capable of creating something even close to it. Watching this movie made me feel many things, but one of the biggest emotions it left me with was being made to feel humble.
That's interesting. I think that ultimately good media is evocative. And if something is making you feel that deeply, then it is truly connecting with you.
If something is making me cry in a closet for 2 hours.
Yeah, because it means it's making you think and feel things that you haven't experienced or that you've experienced in different contexts outside of watching it. And I know whenever my wife and I are watching stuff and we have that sort of feeling, we'll just look at each other and say, my life is different now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know how to articulate this necessarily, but like, I want to be very clear that yes, not a joke. I had a mental breakdown after watching this movie. I am not exaggerating that fact in any way.
No.
I do not feel negatively towards this movie for what it did to me.
I mean, it's evoking a lot of philosophy, it's evoking a lot of psychology, a lot of really heavy and highly emotional themes and highly emotional events happening in the story. I think there are people who choose to avoid media that makes them feel this way, which I don't think there's anything wrong with, but I think that media that is this impactful should be celebrated by people who enjoy it.
Especially today, when you consider the horrors. More so than usual, I think there is something to be said for escapism in media.
I think there's a time and place for escapism in media, but I also think that without tackling things that are challenging our beliefs and making us look intrinsically that we won't grow as people consuming media, as content creators, as human beings.
Yeah. The very last note that I have in my watch notes from this movie, I'm not sure what I feel right now, but I feel a lot of it.
So, before we get too much into themes, I think it's important we touch a little bit more on human instrumentality, because that fit pretty much into that whole chunk of spoilers we did not touch on the original. Human instrumentality is the ultimate goal of Zila, and also to an extent Gendo, and that is what the Evas were originally created for. How do I explain this concisely?
I think a good condensed explanation for the Human Instrumentality Project is they are trying to force all of humanity into a collected consciousness where there is no separation or secrets or anything from anybody. We are all just one being existing on like a metaphysical plane.
In the primordial soup.
We want to become soup.
It's interesting because I think instrumentality is meant to reflect identity, and it like the idea of individual versus collective identities, and how a lot of the time how we see ourselves is dictated by the people around us, which is an ongoing theme throughout Evangelion, but it becomes incredibly clear when the whole premise for leaving instrumentality once you join it is being able to remember yourself and distinguish yourself from a sea of people.
Which is a big thing that we've talked about on the show a few times now, because there's, as we found out, a lot of anime like to cover this sort of topic.
It's almost like Japan is a collectivist nation.
It's almost like there's cultural differences influencing the art that we consume. But it's still, no matter how obvious it might end up being, I do still think it is noteworthy.
Yeah.
Or worth noting.
I think why Evangelion resonates so much to a lot of people as well is because it's a bit ahead of the curve of discussing mental health in a way that is relatable to people. I wouldn't give it credit for being like mental health representation, but I think it delves just deep enough into the issues that I don't think a lot of people were doing at the time, and I think a lot of people are still struggling to do nowadays.
I think there's probably like, in media, I think there's a line that something can cross where it's like, it goes from being a metaphor about mental health to talking about mental health. Like, the Babadook is a very good metaphor for depression and grief and moving on and all that sort of thing. Evangelion, yes, is very metaphorical, obviously, but I think it does cross that line just a little bit to where it's more than just a metaphor for mental health and struggling mental health, but it actively is like, hey, motherfucker, let's talk about mental health.
I think it depicts it, but it doesn't outright state it, if that makes sense. Like, we're jumping to our own conclusions, but it's something like, I can't imagine anyone has been mentally healthy always. And I guess the way I'm looking at it is it's not representation of mental illness as much as it's a broader discussion of like mental health and self-image and the way we socialize with others, which definitely is going to disproportionately impact or resonate more with people who are constantly dealing with those struggles. And I think that can be a big draw here.
Evangelion is more than just a metaphor for mental health, but it's not quite a Ted Lasso in the way that we're gonna have an entire episode where the main character just goes to therapy and learns that therapy is good and talks about how therapy is important.
Interesting.
So this is usually about the time in the episode we do our little complaints roundtable to knock out any grievances we might have with what we watched. But the only thing I really have to complain about is that you can tell this movie came out before Porygon killed all those kids, because some parts of this movie physically fucking hurt to look at.
Oh my god, I didn't think of that. When was Electric Soldier Porygon? Like 99? 98?
I checked. It was like 6 months after this movie came out. Also, that's not actually fair to poor Porygon. Pikachu was the one who caused the epilepsy thing in that episode.
Poor Porygon.
Hashtag justice for Porygon.
That's so sad. Yeah, I've heard that sentiment for like a lot of stuff that came out around this time period, though. Like, I've heard people say that a lot about, what's it called? Gaigagar?
Gao Gaigar. Yeah, the intro to Gao Gaigar hurts.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of, like, what complaints I have. I have a dumb one.
Do tell.
Why do we have to see so many teenage nipples in this? I know they're not sexualized, but, like, the way that they're presented still makes them feel sexualized. And yet, when Misato's getting railed, she's not even in the frame. Hello? If you're gonna show someone's nipples, show Misato's nipples. Come on! Why does Ray even have them?
Okay, so a couple points on that. First, I think this falls into a similar thing that we talked about when we did Sweet Blue Flowers, where you do see not a lot, but you do see some underage nudity, but it is not sexually presented, it is artistically presented. So
why don't we get to see Misato's nipples?
Giving it a pass for artistic intent. Okay, I'm getting there, motherfucker.
Okay.
I'm getting there. Secondly, any sort of like uncomfortable feeling that comes from the underage nipples on screen, I think is intentional.
That's
uncomfortableness.
Fair. I would say that for some of the scenes. Why does Ray have nipples?
Okay.
Why does Big Ray have nipples?
Well, that's one of the scenes I'm talking about. And also, if we really want to delve into the artistic bullshit of it all, like going to your thing about it being the maternal aspect and creation, what is more maternal than a pair of breasts?
Yeah, that's why it's a dumb complaint, because I understand, but also, come on, show us some Misato titty.
Okay, to finally get to Misato's titties, or lack thereof, I would argue that having zero sexual nipple helps keep the non-sexual nipple from feeling sexual. Like, make sure there is no titillation whatsoever, and that way it is harder to argue that anything else is intended to be titillating.
Titillating.
Motherfucker, is that really the only response you have to that, you piece of shit?
No, I think you're right. I think it would be short-sighted to be praising pussy and shaming nipple here, because they do both, like, they're both being used in the context of, like, maternity and childbirth and what have you.
The weeb years. Praised the pussy, shamed the nipple. Now, you're much more in tune with the Ava fandom than I am, so you're going to have to tell me if what I'm about to say is a hot take or not, and if so, how hot.
Okay.
For as much as I will absolutely sing the praises of End of Evangelion, I think I actually prefer the original ending.
I think that's less common. And actually, my wife felt so strongly about the original ending that she refused to watch End of Evangelion with me because she didn't want it to impact her enjoyment of the TV series ending. So I think there are people out there that feel that way. And I like both. I think they both offer very different things. I really like how abstract the TV ending is versus End of Evangelion, which is like really dense.
Mm-hmm. I want to say, like, my enjoyment of the original ending over End of Evangelion, it's only, like, it wins out for me by just a hair. I think in our Ava episode, my fresh response was a bit harsher to it, but when I went back and rewatched the last two episodes after watching the movie, I just really like how they play around with the animation, and, like, I don't know, maybe this is me admitting to being a bit smooth-brained, but I think there's something to be said for how the show just kind of stares you in the face in those last two episodes and goes, here are the themes, here is the message. Also, again, speaking to what you were saying earlier about the movie being like very interpretable, open to interpretation. I don't know why the fuck I tried to make that one word.
The movie is just so dense. It's like eating a cheesecake. You have to take small bites and pause every few minutes to make sure you understand what's going on in End of Evangelion. Like, I feel like my first couple of times I watched the film, I did not know what the fuck was going on.
I don't know why I'm being so much more vulnerable this episode than I usually am. We obviously needed to do this episode because we already did the show, but honestly, I don't feel qualified to actually say anything meaningful meaningful on the majority of the subject matter. I would rather admit to my shortcomings than try and pretend I'm more capable of articulating a concrete essay than I actually am. End of Evangelion is too smart for me, and I think it's good for me to admit that.
I think Evangelion as a whole actually is just something where the deeper you dig, the more you understand it and the more you learn about the series as a whole and yourself.
It's almost like the deeper you dig, the bigger the hole gets.
Hashtag...
Not that one. Not that hole.
I do think I prefer the original ending just because I prefer the abstract aspect of it and the fact that instrumentality is still left ambiguous. Mm-hmm. Whereas in End of Evangelion, we see both Shinji and Asuka awake from being a part of Human Instrumentality Project. To me, it feels like the TV ending is what it feels like to be in instrumentality, and End of Evangelion is what it feels to leave instrumentality. I kept thinking while I was watching it, it very much feels like a sort of like red pill, blue pill sort of situation with instrumentality and choosing to stay in it or leave it. But it feels like it's a similar sort of like psychological debate whether you want to stay in the soup with the people and be guaranteed happiness or live in reality by waking up from instrumentality.
Reject humanity, become soup.
Gosh, I sure am bored. My favorite podcast only uploads every other week, so all I can do until the next episode comes out is cry into my Haruko Haruhara body pillow.
Reverse those tears back into your eye holes, sad listener person.
We're here to solve all your sadness problems.
And also promote ourselves financially.
Oh my gravy! It's Beanie, Laurel, and Maymay from the Weeb Years, my favorite anime podcast I was just crying about.
Silly listener person, didn't you know that the Weeb Years has a Patreon with tons of exclusive bonus content?
You get access to exclusive recordings and videos, read the notes we take while doing research,
Plus, you can get new episodes 3 days early. That makes you better than everyone else for 3 whole days.
Wow, that all sounds so cool. I wish I had the $100 a month it costs to access all those amazing extra goodies.
Silly listener person, you can access all that fantabulous bonus material for only $5 a month.
Sugoi!
Haha, never say that again.
Just go to patreon.com/theweebyears to cure all your boredom and sadness forever.
Sorry about your wall, by the way.
Alright, so one of these days we're gonna go back to just having a normal retro views, but I got another weird one for you today.
I like the weird ones.
This retro view is a review of a review.
What?
So back in 2003, the magazine New Type USA put out an article reviewing both Death and Rebirth and End of Evangelion, and it was not nice. Now, unfortunately, despite my efforts, I was unable to find a copy of the original review they put out. However, an excerpt from Wikipedia says they called the films a saga of bamboozlement.
Actually, that should go on the box.
Now, shortly after New Type USA put out their review, Marvin Gleitcher, the CEO of Manga Entertainment, responded and basically called them the fuck out.
How so?
So, it's a pretty lengthy rebuttal, so I'm not going to read the entire thing, but there's some pretty excellent little snippets I wanted to touch on.
Oh, I'm so excited. This is crazy.
Dear editor, on behalf of Gainax Studios and Production IG, I feel compelled to respond to what I feel is a biased and disrespectful review of the 2 Evangelion feature films. With Evangelion, Gainax once again revolutionized anime by taking the giant robot genre, a stagnating staple of the otaku diet, and deconstructing the adolescent power fantasy to its foundations. In so doing, Hideaki Anno has painted us an intensely personal portrait of psychological paralysis. The fact that legions of anime fans in Japan and abroad have identified with and embraced Anno's weak, self-loathing, and reluctant protagonist Shinji is a testament to the importance of this work and reinforces one of the ultimate messages within the films. Human existence, though replete with frustration, miscommunication, and anguish, is to be chosen and embraced despite these qualities. To summarize the events of End of Evangelion as Rei gets big, Ava Unit 1 turns into an intergalactic crucifix, everyone dies, is to completely ignore the depth and symbolism present within the film. It's clear that the author of this this review hasn't made the slightest effort to interpret or reflect upon anything he's seen, but merely given us the most facile and vapid book report of these films.
Book report is scathing.
Now, I'm skipping ahead a bit to the last paragraph, but basically the New Type USA article criticized Manga Entertainment for not editing out the first 20 minutes of End of Evangelion, since they're just the last 20 minutes of Death and Rebirth, and said that Manga Entertainment must think their customers are, quote, suckers.
What? When was this written?
2003.
Suckers in 2003. Oh my god, it's so of the time.
It's quite a lot. But the final paragraph of this, which is also a response to that bit. You, as editor of this magazine, are responsible for its content. As such, you've allowed an article to appear therein which is flippant in its tone, completely devoid of anything resembling responsible journalistic research, and insulting to the Japanese creators whom your magazine owes its existence. I can only infer that the decision to print this article was made in order to malign our product. If it is the intent of New Type magazine to compromise journalistic objectivity in favor of the marketing agendas of its parent company ADV, I sincerely hope that your readership quickly realizes that in purchasing your magazine, they, in fact, are the suckers. I really wish I could have found the original article that New Type USA had put out, because I bet it is a fucking read.
I'll see if I can find it after we're done recording.
I absolutely could not find it online. I couldn't even figure out, like, which specific issue it was. Like, I was going to try and find the specific issue and buy it off of eBay.
Oh, wow. And you couldn't even figure out.
I had no such luck. If anybody in the audience happens to know which specific issue of New Type USA has the article on Death and Rebirth and End of Evangelion, please let me know. And if you happen to own it, I will buy it off of you.
I also love this guy fucking going for ADV and New Type's ass. I mean, after hearing how ADV handled a lot of the Evangelion dubbing stuff, this is cathartic.
There is, not to conspiracy theorize or anything, but like ADV was handling the localization of Evangelion franchise, and then it went to Manga Entertainment, and then a subsidiary of ADV is like, hey, you guys did a bad job. Like, there is something a little sus about that.
I mean, I think there's conspiracy theories and then there's following the money, you know? Mm-hmm. I think it's entirely, like, valid criticism to be bringing up if there's conflicts of interest.
I mean, even if there wasn't a conflict of interest, if the original article really is just that poor and that level of bad faith criticism, like, yeah, call them the fuck out.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, no real fun segue into the outro this time, but hopefully you enjoyed listening to this episode, and if so, you can find more of us at Weeb on Blue Sky.
And if you are able to find a copy of that New Type interview, you can send it in an email to us at theweebeers@gmail.com.
As you likely heard during the ad break earlier, we do have a Patreon. $5 a month gets you fun extra content and new episodes 3 days early. If you like the show and you want to support us a little bit more, you can head over to I'mMyMom'sTampon.com and subscribe to the Patreon.
Oh my god, that would be the worst.
I bought that domain as we were recording.
Wait, really?
$13.
Really? This isn't a bit? Holy shit.
This is not a bit. I'mMyMom'sTampon.com will lead to our Patreon.
Oh my god. Why is this the thing we're talking about? Oh, that's so funny. Okay, well, our first merch, if we ever do merch, is gonna have to say I'm my mom's tampon.
Oh god, no. Weeb branded tampons.
No, we could be like you know how they have like the little like makeup bags that people put tampons in? One of those,
oh my god,
it says, I'm my mom's tampon.
Oh my god, that's amazing.
That's my dream.
Oh, this is the best episode we've ever done. Good night, everybody.
Bye!